Hey everybody. So for this week, we are going to have a little lecturette here because we are talking about wellness. And so we wanted to do something a little different for the week. And it's so beautiful outside. It's nice to get out and get out of your confined spaces. Many of you have probably stayed inside. I know that I have. Um, and so it's important to get outside. And so before we even go ahead and get started, um, I want you to go ahead and find a space, somewhere that you're comfortable, but also somewhere that you feel safe and like you can be productive, because we're going to be talking about wellness. So go ahead and find that space now. Now, hopefully, if this worked out like I intended it to, you should have had a question pop up um, for you to tell us where that space is. Where are you comfortable and where do you feel well? So, throughout this lecture, you're going to have questions that pop up for you to think about what does wellness mean for you? And what do these different areas of wellness mean in your circumstance? So, I'm outside here on the patio at my house. Um, and so, it's a beautiful day. So, it's nice to be outside getting it done. So, we'll go ahead and get started. When we think about wellness, we think about a wellness wheel. Um, and where I like to start my lecture is for you to think about uh, what does wellness mean to you? I think for many of us, wellness has been ingrained into our heads as a specific thing. When we think about when we're little, we have no idea what wellness is. But because of um, the news, big companies, corporations, they start to define what wellness means. And oftentimes they tell us that the definition of success is that if we work hard, we'll be successful and then we'll be happy. Well, I'm here to tell you that I think we should flip that question that way. If we're happy, the equation would be if we're happy, we'll work harder and we'll be more successful. And what we found is that scientists have seen that when we work in a happy mindset, we're 26% more productive. That's right. If we work in a happy mindset, we're 26% more productive. And so we've got to switch that equation. We've got to be happy so that we're more productive, and then we'll be successful. It's not about working harder, it's about changing that mindset. And so, how do we do this? And for those of you that are seeing these pictures, of course, these are pictures from my childhood. So feel free to laugh a little bit. But it's because I share these pictures because of that equation, because we're trained to keep working and working and working. We're never content. If we get a B in a class, we want an A in a class. If we get a good job, we want a better job. And so that all goes down to wellness. And the way that I think of it is living the dream. For many of you, if you've asked me in class, how are you doing? You hear me say, living the dream. And you'll see this around campus. It's often my response to students and faculty members alike. How are you doing? Living the dream. And that comes with a story. The story goes to this picture of my mom and not my dad. Um, this man is actually named Kevin, and we met him on a cruise ship several years ago. And if you've ever been on a cruise, when you sit down to dinner every night, you're set with a family. If you have a big enough family, you get your own table, but if not, you're going to be sharing that table with another family. And Kevin was a part of that family that year. And so every night I would ask Kevin, how you doing? And he said, living the dream. The next day, Kevin, how you doing? Living the dream. Finally, it gets to the last night of the cruise, and I'm like, Kevin, how are you doing? And he says, living the dream. And I'm like, Kevin, I can't deal with this anymore. What does that mean? Kevin looked at me and said, Tyler, you're a part of a dream. We're all a part of a dream because in this moment, we are on an amazing trip. We're content in this moment and satisfied with the things that we have around us. And that's where I picked up living the dream because so often we don't think about what we have. And even in these tough times, I have family and friends that reach out to me every day. I have food on the table. I have a place to live. And I get to teach great students like you. So when I say living the dream, it's to remind me of what I have, because so often we forget about it. And when we look at the wheel of wellness, we start to recognize all the things that we have, what we're afforded and what we aren't afforded, or what we don't focus on. I think when you get to college, it's really easy to forget about some of these. And so today I'm going to talk through each of these areas of wellness, because we do a good job in some of them and not so much in others. So the first place we're going to start is social. When we think about social wellness, it's about the friend groups, the people that have our backs through the good times and the bad. This is one that we really do focus on in college because we create those groups. If you look at these pictures, we have supervisors of my past, RAs that I supervised, and a bunch of different friend groups. But when it comes to social wellness, it's knowing who you're able to call when you have a time in need and maintaining those relationships. So I want you to take a chance with each of these areas of wellness. We're going to stop and think about what are things that we currently do to maintain our wellness in this area. What do you do to maintain social wellness? The next area is emotional wellness. And last week we talked about this a little bit, but it's that coping. How do we take care of ourselves? So when we think about emotional wellness, is we think about the challenges that we face. And so this is a picture of me when I was invited to judge an Iron Chef competition, and they brought out um, dishes, an appetizer, an entree, and a dessert from each of the 12 teams. And it was a big meal, of course, to take on. What's surprising, and this is just a fun fact, is this: I asked what the secret ingredients were. The secret ingredients that year were kiwi, which I had never had, avocado, which I had never had, and shredded coconut, which I was a fan of. But how surprising to be taking on and judging dishes that I had never even tasted. But it was a fun time. But getting back to this, it's about emotional wellness and being able to cope with those difficult things that come up in life. For us, we think about, um, I want to talk specifically about the COVID-19 crisis. I think during that first week, I for sure sat down and had to have moments where I cried, that I had to let it out. But from there was coming up with what was I going to do to take that on? Um, Watching movies, specifically comedies, going on walks to get outside, connecting with friends that I'd never spoken to. Emotional wellness is knowing what we're going to do in those times where we need to. So at this point, what are some of those things that you do to deal with your emotional well-being? What are some of those coping methods? The next area of wellness that we're going to talk about is physical wellness. Now, of course, this is the one that we all know about because it's what we talk about on New Year's Eve, right? Everybody talks about, I'm going to cut candy, I'm going to cut sugar, I'm going to cut soda, I'm going to go to the gym. And if you go to the gym, there's a billion people there. But for some reason, we drop those things. And I would say that when we think about wellness in general, we think about physical well being. We don't think about the other areas. But when we think about all of these areas of wellness, we have to think of them as a bicycle tire. If we get or break part of the spokes of the tire, we're not able to move those tire wheels as well. And so, if we focus on physical wellness, but we don't focus on the other areas, we are that broken tire. And so, one of the things that I think within physical wellness, and sorry to stop us, but this is a picture I always wanted to bike the Golden Gate Bridge. And in high school, I had the opportunity to bike that bridge. You'll notice that it was a foggy day, so you didn't get to see much of the bridge, but it was still a very cool experience to do. And so, what are the things that we do when it comes to physical wellness? Before I ask you to write something down, I do want to take a chance for us to do a guided meditation because there's lots of ways that we can practice physical wellness. Of course, we can work out, we can hit the gym, we could go to the club and go dancing, but sometimes, and I think in moments like these, we need to take a break and do um, some some meditation. And so I always say there's a meditation for everything, and we're just going to do a general one. But if you YouTube meditation, you'll find that there's a lot of opportunities out there. So go ahead and find a place where you're able to relax and do this meditation.
Mindful breathing.
Yeah, maybe not. All right, before we move on, I want you to go ahead and take a moment and write out, how do you practice physical wellness? All right. So the next area we're going to talk about is spiritual wellness. And so for many of us, we think of religion, prayer, whatever that looks like for you. It's finding that thing that grounds you, that gives you a meaning of life. Um, I had a student one time, and when we asked, what gives you the meaning of life? They talked that every day they go out into their backyard and they dig a hole and they plant their feet in the earth. And I think that is spiritual well being to the next level. For me, I put a picture of my family. They are my everything, they are what give me life. I think in these tough times, it's often easy to forget about each of our areas of wellness. But for spiritual wellness, we think about, why are we here, and grounding us. Take some time to make some notes about how you practice spiritual wellness. The next area of wellness is environmental. And so when I ask students every semester, what does environmental wellness look for you? What is a practice that you use? They talk about cleaning their room. And so for you, switching to online learning, it was that question we asked in the first week. What is that location? What is that place where you can be successful? For me, of course, I've set up outside here. Um, but if you watch the video on Flipgrid, I'm set up at the dining room. I find a safe space in my bedroom and my office, and I make it my own. So for environmental wellness, it could be that, but it also could be giving back to your environment, whether that's through recycling, using less energy, or making environmentally friendly, conscious decisions. That is what environmental wellness means for you. It's a wide array of things. So I want you to go ahead, take some time, once again, to write down, what is an environmental wellness practice that you're currently taking to be well in this area. The next area of wellness we're going to talk about is intellectual well-being. And that's the idea that we've been talking about all semester. It's being open-minded to learning and exploring everything. We think about our values, and at the beginning of the semester, we talked about this I believe and started listening to those. We all have such different values. We all have such different beliefs. We have to be open-minded to learning something on a regular basis. And so within intellectual wellness, it could be me saying I want to learn how to sew, or that I want to learn a different language. But it could also be open to the mind of others. In this picture, one of my first communities that I ever worked with as a resident assistant was the international community. And I grew up in Indiana, and of course, we have many cornfields in Indiana. And when my international students came to visit my hometown, they said, Tyler, Americans always take pictures in corn. And so I said, no, we don't. But as you'll see from this picture, we went ahead and took a picture in the corn. Before we move on to this next area, go ahead and take some time and think about, how are you practicing intellectual well being on a regular basis? The next area of wellness is occupational wellness. When we think about this, if you don't already have a job, it's where you work. It's the people you work with, and it's the goal setting techniques you're taking to make sure that you're moving to where you want to work. For some of this is going to be going to college and studying a major that is something you want to work in. For me, it was working in student success, working as a resident assistant. I discovered that I wanted to work with students pretty early on in the college experience. And so I needed to find positions and people that would help me to get there. With occupational wellness, it's that networking piece of finding a place and people that are going to help you get where you are. So, what are some things that you're doing in your occupational wellness to make sure that you are moving to a place where you're well? The next one is financial wellness. When we think about financial wellness, we often think about that bank account or that credit card. Here I put a picture of Disney. And we have to think sometimes about the value of our life. How important is it for me to go to Disney? You know, in times like these where I haven't been to Disney in many weeks, it's tough. But we live off those memories. And so we don't have to make big investments to be well. Financial literacy and financial wellness is about having the means to live and also feel well. So it may not be Disney for all of us. It may not be Disney for me on a regular basis, but it's being able to provide for my family, being able to pay those student bills or to recognize the loans, um, and how are we going to pay off those loans, whatever that may be. Even the idea, I think, of credit cards. If you don't have a credit card, how are you building your credit? I didn't have a credit card until graduate school. And that's when somebody said, well, how are you building your credit? So I got a credit card and started paying for Taco Bell and Steak and Shake, and then using my bank account to cover those immediately. But that's how we take little by little steps to build our credit score. So what are some things that you're doing to make sure that you're financially well? Those are the eight dimensions of wellness. And when we think about each of the eight dimensions, like I said, we think about it, the spokes of a bicycle. Even looking at this picture pulled out, you see those spokes. And then for each one, we could only be this full if we are well. If we aren't focused, if there were areas that you struggled with that you haven't really focused in or done something in, then that spoke isn't as strong. It's a weak spoke. And so the last thing that I'm going to have you do is that I want to think about, how did we get there and where are we going? We talked about goal setting in that first semester or the first week, the first month of class, sorry. Um, and so, how did we get there? What are we doing? And so, you've talked about what you're doing, but now we want to take some steps to talk about what we will do. So, now in the last box, we're going to do I will commitment statements. So, for each of the areas of wellness, what is something that you commit yourself to doing? Think of this as a New Year's resolution. Now, of course, I will not be going in and checking to see if you're doing these things. This is for yourself. These are ways for us to improve. Some examples of physical wellness. I will stick to a specific bedtime every night. Of spiritual wellness, I will attend Mass once a week. Of emotional wellness, I will take 1 hour a day for me time. What are some things that you'll do within each of the 8 dimensions of wellness to be well? Like I said, all of those things that we've done today are for you. Of course, we could double check and see how things are going, but at the end of the day, it's about you and how you're doing when it comes to these areas of wellness. When I started the presentation, I talked about how we've always been trained that if we work hard, we'll be successful and we'll be more happy. But we've got to be happy today. If we're happy today, we'll be more productive. And so, if there was an area there where you recognized you weren't strong, it's time to focus on it because that's going to improve our well being. And that's how we become happy. Take those steps. Government, big corporations, nobody can do those for you. Only you can control your wellness. So go out, start making changes, become a positive person, become happy, change that mindset, and improve your world. Thank you so much.